So Alice, take it away. Tell us about developing and leveraging your personal brand.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I am going to make sure that, oh, there we go. Thanks for the great introduction as well. So just a quick tidbit, a little bit about me. Marketing is my passion. I've been in marketing and branding for 15 years. I've been in real estate for 6, and 3 years ago, I founded Tesoro Real Estate with my husband. So that is our real estate investment firm. So this is the perfect venue and opportunity because I'm sort of co-merging the two things I really love the most and love to teach and speak about, which is marketing and real estate.
Your husband.
And my husband as well, exactly. Yeah. And then I put this slide here because I always think it's, you know, when I talk to other investors, and especially in this group, women who are already investing or women who are very interested in really taking a big leap into the investment within real estate. So why, lots of people ask me, why real estate, right? There's lots of options. You can invest in many different ways, lots of traditional methods. So, you know, really, I mean, I put the 2 pictures there. I just took those this week. So I'm in Costa Rica for almost a month here working on a development project, but I'm able to combine, you know, vacationing, working, having that nice work-life balance, which I really, really love. And of course, I've got great internet, so I can work as much or as little as I want, depending on the day. So you see that in the bottom right corner picture. That's me in the pool working on this presentation. Just a few months ago. Yeah, which is awesome. And then the top, that was a beach picture we took. That was in, I believe, Playa Negra. We were just there a few days ago as well. So it's, for me, it's about a lifestyle, being able to do the work I love while I have the flexibility. So that's really what real estate affords both me and my husband. I was able to say goodbye to the 9-to-5, which is to me really important. We've worked really hard to be able to replace our incomes comfortably. And, you know, like all the things we talk about here on WREN, it's about having that financial freedom. And then that way I can be very selective. Once I have that stability and that freedom, I can be selective about the people and the projects that I choose to work with. You know, one of them, of course, being WREN, because I so align with the mission and what we're trying to do. And it's really helped me in my life. So I want to help and teach other women to do the same.
That's fantastic. And I love the poolside video, the poolside computer. Of course, for those of you who have been, well, you know, I was in Mexico and was doing exactly the same thing, right? We were looking at properties in Mexico. I was getting my house ready for sale in Victoria. We had, I don't know, God, how many events we had. Julia and Shelley managed the events while I was away with help from you and from Nia, and you did a newsletter while you were down there in Costa Rica, and we just sent that out as a reminder today. So it's have computer, have internet, will travel.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's a lot of what we're about. It's, you know, one of the things we kind of joke about is it's not about the real estate, it's about what real estate allows us to do for our life. And so aligning with people who are in your same kind of field of vision and have your same values. I mean, that's why this branding thing is so important, because people aren't interested in traveling and aren't interested in having a lot more freedom. They might not align with us. They might find a group that's doing something slightly different. But we're all about making sure that we're using real estate to help fund our future. And so that's one of the reasons why you and I connected so quickly. We love travel, and you got right away what we're trying to do. And so you know, with I think any time you bring someone else on board, there's always a little bit of time to work out, to get the messaging, and we've only been working together for a couple months, and it's really starting to show, right? Like it's really starting to look good. So cool. And as we go through this, Alice, I'll probably jump in and ask you a couple of questions, and ladies and gentlemen, if there's any gentlemen on the webinar, feel free to ask us questions too. And why don't we pop over to your next slide?
Yeah, perfect. So this is just a summary slide. I like to summarize what we're going to learn today. So the main 3 buckets that I want to speak about today, number 1 is the difference between marketing and branding, because often these are terms that are interchanged and used a lot, but they're actually two different functions, and I'll explain why. Number two, how to develop your own personal brand. I've got some exercises, some tips, some tricks that, especially for those who are at the very beginning trying to build their brand, will hopefully give them some ideas, some exercises to work through to get to that point in developing their own brand. And lastly, very important, how to attract the clients you want to achieve your goals.
Awesome. That's so important. And we've just finished doing our 2 events, and so we're going to go into a bit of a strategy over the summer. So getting ready to really use our marketing and our branding to help find those right clients as we get ready for a bigger presence, for lack of a better word, in the fall. It's going to be really exciting to see how all of that comes together.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait.
Yeah.
So this is a slide that I've made that to me succinctly explains the difference. So marketing is more about the strategies, tools, tactics used to acquire customers. And there's lots of parts, there's channels of distribution, so there's lots of moving parts within marketing, but it's basically about the activities or the tactics. Whereas branding, which is what we're going to focus on today, is actually the highest level. It's if we talk about funnels and marketing, we love marketers, we love the word funnels. It's at the very top because it speaks to who you are, how you're positioning yourself, so your product or your service, in the most clearly defined way in the eyes of the customer. So that's at the very, very top. So I developed actually this marketing cycle, which hopefully will better elucidate or explain how different things sit. So if you see here, number one, on the awareness piece, number one is branding. Who are you and why should I care? So that's got to happen first, because before you can have a business, before you can start attracting customers, you really need to know what your brand really speaks to and what type of people you want to attract. So that's number one. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about that today. And honestly, I've worked in many different companies. I've worked with big brands. I've had huge millions of dollars of marketing budget. So, companies spend a lot of time and a lot of money thinking very intentionally about the brands that they want to create, how they're speaking to their customers. And it also, is important for us as entrepreneurs to think about that branding piece as well. So
and
that's
Alice,
at the very top.
might be going to talk about this, but is branding more important now than it has been in the past?
It could, yeah, it could be. With the onset of the internet and a lot of online businesses, there can be, of course, depending on the industry and what you're trying to do, there can be a lot of clutter. So yes, absolutely. In that sense, branding becomes super important because it's like, how do you stand out? How are you different? What are you offering that's different? So yeah, that's a really, really good question.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so and then the second phase of that marketing cycle is interest. So once people know who you are and why they should care, this is when the marketing comes in, right? So it's about audience targeting. What is your strategy? How are you going to get in front of those people? And there's, again, we could do hours and hours of talk about all that. There's so many different ways. There's traditional methods, online methods, and it changes every single day. So, but the point of that is to really gauge your customer's interest in the second step. In the third step, now you've moved to engagement. So how are you communicating with your customer right at the moment that they're interested? So in our case, let's say for real estate, if I want to attract an investor, how do I make sure that I'm engaging with a man or woman who is, let's say, ready to invest or, wants to learn more about how to take the next step, how, they want to acquire a property, let's say. So how is our marketing and our branding attracting them at that exact moment that they're ready? Because often, depending on your product or service, there's a long cycle. It's not just a transactional thing where, let's say, I'm selling you a cookie for $1 and it's very simple and easy to understand. So we want to engage them right at the moment. And that's step 3. Step 4, of course, very important, is the conversion. So we've gone through all the previous steps, but now the sale is actually made in that process. And then step 5, which a lot of people forget about, is the referral. And referral is such a strong, especially, even in big businesses, but especially in smaller entrepreneurial businesses, such a strong and practically free marketing strategy that people forget, because the word of mouth, the recommendation that they make to other people will then start the cycle again.
Right.
So let's say I tell my friend, wow, REN's amazing, you should join. So if they don't know anything about REN, they're going to go through the cycle and say, okay, let me go through the awareness piece, who is WREN, why should I care, that sort of thing. So this is just a good, I think, simple cycle to explain the marketing journey.
And referrals seem to be, again, much like branding has become very important and something that we're all so kind of hyper aware of these days. Referrals, with Facebook and Instagram and all of the other social media platforms that we're all on. I mean, we refer our plumbers, well, especially being in real estate, we refer, we give our restaurants that we go to or our favorite beer. I mean, we are really, we're in referral mode all the time. I mean, I can't even count how many referrals I probably do in a day, even subconsciously, right? Because I'm like, oh, I just went to Spinnaker's and had an awesome new drink that I hadn't had before. And as soon as you kind of put that out into the universe, now people are going to say, oh, I wonder what that drink is at Spinnaker's. So we just so many more people on social media. So do you remember that there was an old commercial, I tell two friends and you tell two friends, and it was this, it might have been a shampoo, and it had like a chart of all of these people that were being reached by friends movement. So yeah, the referral is so important. So important.
Yeah, so important. Yeah. And that's, I mean, really what it comes down to is trust, right? Because I trust my friends, I trust my family. If they say Spinnaker's is awesome, I'm at least going to give it a try versus like a more cold, cold marketing tactic or a cold call. So yeah, that's really important part of the marketing cycle that people often forget, but it needs to be put in there into consideration. So I made this slide because I thought it was also a simple way to explain what examples of branding really mean. So where do these, like right away you see these symbols, where do these brands sit in the customer's mind? And what I really like about this, so these are all sort of retail stores, right, across North America, but it's very simple to see the power of branding here because you see the Walmarts and the Targets on the right side, and they represent a certain type of brand, right, the value-driven type of brand, whereas on the left side you think of Saks, you think of Nordstrom, that's sort of the luxury brand. And it's not like one is necessarily better than the other, it's just they're very clear on the customers they serve and where they sit in that customer's mind. Like in like 1 second when I showed you this slide, you knew exactly, you had emotions, you had feelings that linked you to that logo because you knew what they stood for. Yeah, exactly. So that's what branding really is. Yeah, it's actually highly emotional. And like I mentioned, actually Walmart was one of my clients that I worked with many years ago as well, and I've worked with some big companies. But they're very, like I mentioned, branding is it's very intentional and it's also very emotional. So they spend a lot of time building it on purpose to attract, again, the people that they want to attract. So
marketing machines. I mean, there's so many that I think of right off the top of my head, and just those examples that you put up there. I mean, they're so, like, you see them, and as you say, you instantly know who you're talking about, right? I mean, it's like Nike and like Nike's really hitting the emotion right now. Have you seen the new, with being in Costa Rica, have you seen the new ad they've done for women's soccer?
No, I have not.
Talking about it. It's it's really interesting. People are talking about this new Nike ad that they've done for women's soccer. It's talk about emotional, right? Like people on Facebook, oh, I just watched the new Nike ad and I'm crying, and it's
and I mean, actually I mentioned Nike in a few slides from now, but they're awesome at marketing. They know exactly what they're doing, and at times some people may consider them controversial, but again, they know the risk that they're taking and they know what type of emotions they want to elicit out of their target market. So yeah, they're brilliant at it.
And some of us like controversy, so we're gonna align with them because we like controversy.
Yeah, exactly. And we're talking about them whether you agree or not. So
yeah, exactly. It's about finding people who turn on your switch or make you have a conversation, right?
Yeah, exactly. So here's
I really like this slide.
Yeah, so this is just a couple of ways that have worked for me in working with other entrepreneurs and smaller companies about how to start thinking, because a lot of people will be like, I don't know where to start, what should I do? How to start thinking about the type of brand that you want to create. So on the left side, I put in there, think of adjectives, customer segments, or interests. And I'm going to go into deep detail in that in the future slides. So adjectives are like descriptive words, you know, are you classic versus modern? Are you value driven versus luxury, which was like the previous slide that we just saw? And towards the right side, what I like actually is for people to think of opposing ideas, because then it forces you to choose, you know, on what side of the spectrum you're on. So the example I gave there was, do you want to focus on, let's say, millennials as one group or the baby boomers? Right? So that way you really have to, on both sides of the spectrum, you really have to pick. Or another one, if we're talking about interests, you know, maybe we want to focus on people who like gardening versus sports, because they may be slightly different markets. So this is, I just want to give a couple of exercises just to start the brain juices going a little bit when you're thinking about what kind of brand you want to build. And so here's another slide. Oops. That I really like. So this is adjective slides. So you see there's so many different descriptive words, and when you're developing a brand, you need to be really clear on what that because again, it's that emotional connection, right? So I've got some examples here. Are you more of a traditional brand? Are you, you know, warm and fun? Are you a disruptor? You know, you're innovative, you're hippie, you're modern. And again, nothing is necessarily better or worse than another. It's just you as a business person or you as you're developing your brand, you need to make a decision and be clear and stick to it.
And it's really interesting because Joan and I are looking at our brand for Trailer Park Girls, right?
Oh, so, I like that.
So the other day we were looking at 50s retro, and it's amazing how much fun and like the colors and I mean, you just like, we found probably within 10 minutes colors that we liked and styles that we liked and like little starburst kind of graphics, and it just like completely took us back to that you know, the retro posters and so yeah, so we're so clear on our, you know, our mobile home park in the US. We're so clear on the branding for that company, and it just was popping out at us, and we found tons of great stuff like the lettering, and oh, it was just, it's brilliant. It's really cool, and it just looks retro, like it screams retro. So it's awesome. It's really obvious how it's retro it is.
Exactly, and it's fun. Like I mean, maybe it's just because I'm a marketer, but building brands to me is my most favorite thing to do. It's super fun because you can be creative, like you're saying, all the different fonts and colors and this and that. So yeah, it's really a great part of your business to work on. So here's what I was mentioning previously about different. So these are different ways we can now start to segment our brand, right? Because as much as you have a certain image or vision for your brand, your brand also needs to speak to a very specific clientele, right?
Yeah.
So I think these are,
a lot of people get this wrong, right? Like I you know, I mean, I know when I was writing the business plan for WREN, my customer demographic was I mean, it was all my, you know, my primary customer, it was a 2-page description. I mean, I had her like, it's so funny because when I showed that to the first person who became a WREN member, she was like, oh my God, that's me. And I said, I know, because you're my primary customer, right? Like, this is who I created this business for. So yeah, really getting in like super focused. People go general, like women, right? And it's like, okay, the Women's Real Estate Network, but we, you know, we're still narrowing it down into who in terms of women are part of our segment.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you mentioned that as well. And you've obviously done a lot of the hard work, but that's what you need to do. You need to get really, even all of these. Okay, gender might be a little bit simpler because there's not a lot of choices, but you know, with age group, like you have to decide. You can't say I mean, you can, but I mean, it's just a little bit more difficult if you say, like 12 to 65, right? Because they have different needs, they have different ways of communicating. So as much as you can, and we're going to talk about this a bit later, it's called persona work, but we need to start segmenting the ideal customers you want to attract for your business. So here are things you can think about: their income level as well, important, ethnicity if it's applicable, and their profession. So these are some key demographic traits that you can look at. Another one I would recommend is personal interests. So people tend to forget about this because they get a little bit hung up on the demographic piece, which is important. But, right there, I got women's groups, right? So what are your ideal customer? What do they like to do? What are they interested in? Because this is where you can find them at the end of the day, right? So I just put some examples there: sporting groups, right? Like for a long time, I was part of a martial arts gym. So, they have a particular set of things that they like to do, and, you can market to those people if that's your crew. Volunteer organizations, music, art, theater groups, and they're highly referable as well. Like if you get in with these types of groups and you have similar values, they start sharing with each other.
Absolutely.
And professional associations as well.
Yeah, and I can definitely see, like with WREN, right? I mean, yes, we're a women's group, but we have certain characteristics. We like to travel, we like to enjoy ourselves, we like wine, we care about our communities. Some of us have aging parents or are bringing up young children, so there's lots of affinity there in how we connect with each other and how we find each other. So yeah,
Exactly.
It's all there. It's all there.
Yeah, exactly. So think about your ideal customer. What are their personal interests, their hobbies? What groups do they belong to? So sorry about the clicking. There we go. So that right there is already a lot to think about. And like you said, I think, Liza, you had 2 pages worth, right? Yeah. So I mean, it can really get, yeah, you can really get that detailed as well. And so I just wanted to briefly share a couple of, I would call them universal branding laws for the group today, to kind of keep at the top of your mind as you're developing your brand. So the first one, universal branding law: always be consistent. So I love this picture because there's all these lemons, and even the lemon on the outside is still yellow and it's still a lemon, right? So I don't know any other way to explain it, but just no matter what you do, once you've determined, you have to go through the hard work of, developing your brand. What do you really stand for? All that stuff. But once you've found, in your case, the Trailer Park Girls, that's, that type of whatever the brand is, stick with it.
Yeah.
Don't go back and forth, because then you confuse the customer. They're like, well, are you like modern or are you more traditional? So that's really important. The second universal marketing law is, or sorry, the first one is a branding law. This is a marketing law, which is to know your customer. So we've talked a lot about that as well. And I stuck with the lemon theme, but you see how the pink, I like the pink lemon because all the rest are yellow. So the pink lemon is that very specific customer that you've developed and targeted, that that you want to appeal to.
Exactly. And it's interesting, when I was working at a development a couple of years ago, a real estate development, I used to walk around saying marketing 101, know your customer. And I think one of the things that I used to say is, you are not your customer. Because we all have a tendency to create things that we like, and I mean, I'm guilty of it. I mean, for sure, my branding is definitely aligned with things that I like, but they did a lot of marketing that was about what they liked, and then they got a really great marketing professional who went and surveyed their customers and said, what do you want to see? And it was like the light bulb went off.
Yeah.
You're not selling something to yourself.
Exactly.
You're selling to people who are out there, and they don't necessarily care that your favorite color is purple. They want to be sold to them and what they want to be sold to. So
exactly,
that know your customer, that gets forgotten a lot.
Yes.
A lot. Yeah.
Even big, very successful entrepreneurs forget that as well.
Oh,
yeah. So if there's anything else you want to take away from this webinar, is those 2 things really: is be consistent with your branding, and know your customer.
Yeah. Marketing, 100%. I call that marketing 101.
Yeah, exactly. It's simple, but like you said, lots of people forget it.
People forget. Yeah.
Exactly.
Super.
So I wanted to give an example here as we're talking about knowing your customer. It's called something in the marketing field called persona work. Again, it's similar to what you were explaining, Liza, about the 2 pages. So as you're going through your branding process and you've now starting to think about your ideal customer, what persona work really is, it's just a fancy marketing term they invented a couple of years ago that really just means target market, right? So how can you describe in detail your ideal customer? Now, how this is different than in the previous work is that it gets very, very specific. So the personas, for example, often have a name, and you're really building out a profile. So it's almost as if your brand was a person or your ideal customer, like how would you describe them as a personality, as a friend, that sort of thing. So we get into very deep detail, and I've given you one example here of a persona that I've developed. So, ideally you want to create no more than 2 or 3. So when you're brainstorming, you can have, 5, 10 different who you think your customers may be. But at the end, you really want to hone it down to the top 2 or 3 persona profiles. And then you want to get as detailed as possible here. So I've given an example, and, we'll have the slides up available on the membership dashboard, so you can access this at any time. But see, I've developed a persona here for Sarah. So she's a 32-year-old. So I have gender, I've got her age in there, and I've got her profession. She's an accounting professional. She's married. She lives in a townhouse currently with her husband. She has 1 child. So right now her goals are to purchase a detached home eventually and have 2 to 3 investment properties with the goal of saving for her child's university and hopefully having a little bit more extra for retirement. So already I'm kind of in Sarah's mind, right? Like what does she want to achieve with her life and why?
Yeah.
What are her hobbies? Well, someone like Sarah with this profile would probably like swimming and Zumba. She likes DIY projects. She likes cooking healthy meals for her family, and she enjoys reading. So we're talking about the personal interest groups. Where might I be able to find Sarah outside of work, right, through her hobbies? So that's an example. And then, of course, very important, and Liza, you and I talk about this a lot, are the pain points.
My favorite.
Yeah,
what
exactly.
Pain points? What problem are we solving?
Exactly. And that goes back again to knowing your customer and not thinking about what you like or what you think you know. What does your customer really, how do you provide value to them? So in the case of Sarah, her pain points and frustrations are she feels that sometimes she does not have enough financial knowledge. She wants to save more, but she doesn't really have the education, and she doesn't really know what to do to start real estate investing. And I've met lots of people like that, in my journey as well in real estate. So this is kind of like the gold nugget here that will help figure out how to best target her by solving and hitting her pain points.
Exactly.
And then another further point I added there is, how does she make a decision? Right, so you could maybe help her with her pain point, but at what point is she going to decide to work with me or you? Right?
And again, I think that's another one that people forget. Right, like the pain points. You hear me talk about that all the time, right? What pain are we solving? The sandwich generation is looking after aging parents and young children. How are they going to do that? That's an obvious pain. How am I going to have more money to travel? How am I going to be able to afford to retire? But a lot of people stop at those pain points and don't get to the decision point, which is where the whole cycle kind of that's
exactly.
where you want to finish up. So
exactly. So that would be the conversion point, right? So you've got the awareness and the interest and the engagement, so they're all in there, but you really need to get to the 4th part of the cycle, which is the conversion. So in Sarah's case, how does she decide if she wants to work with me? She needs to understand how investing in real estate will help her reach her goals. So in this case, the education gap. So she needs to feel confident that the education I'm providing her is going to help her reach her goals. And she will also decide to convert or take the next step if someone she knows, so a peer or a family, recommends, my company to her, let's say.
Yeah.
So we need to really get into her head and think, okay, at what point is she going to reach that tipping point and she'll convert? So when she feels comfortable, if she has a peer recommendation and she has a clear understanding of how education in real estate and investing is going to help her, she's going to want to join.
Absolutely. And with WREN, I mean, it's so much based on peers. It's just we have women lending to each other. We have women doing projects together. I mean, it's just endless. Like it's, peers are helping us put on the events,
Mm-hmm.
and the peers are volunteering for us. They're becoming investors. So it's amazing. And nowadays, I think because our circle of peers is getting so much bigger, um,
Mm-hmm.
social media, we can dive deeper into that so much quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, and we have so much access to people's peers now. We didn't have
Mm-hmm.
as much direct access. Now there's like, can you introduce me to so and so? And there's no, well, what do you need to know so and so for? There's none of that kind of. Now it's just, yeah, yeah. I'll shoot you his VCF card, or I'll text you his
Mm-hmm.
number. Right? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a great opportunity for all of
Hmm.
us,
Hmm.
which is wonderful.
Oh,
Great.
there
So
it
the
is. There's
next,
Nike.
yeah, there's a Nike. Yeah. So the next section I'm going to take some time to discuss is this idea of personal branding versus corporate branding. So there is a difference, and again, it's not right or wrong. It's up to your personal preference as an entrepreneur. Do you want to be known? So personal branding is personal. So it would be, let's say, the Alice Soon brand or the Liza Rogers brand. In this case, in the bottom right, I actually put a lady who I really love to follow because I love crystals. Her name is Hibiscus Moon, but she is her brand, and she runs a seven-figure business, 100% online. So she's built this personal brand, very hippie, crystals, Mother Earth, that sort of thing. And then you have on the other side on the left the big Nike brand. So that is a good example of a corporate brand. So it's more of, I would say, an organizational brand. So it's not defined by one or two specific people. It's its own entity.
Right.
So when you're building your brand, it's really up to you. You can have both. You can have separate brands. Lots of entrepreneurs have multiple brands. The key is you need to know how they're different and keep them separate
Yeah.
as well. So I'm going to spend some time. I'm going to start first with the personal branding matrix. This has really taken off definitely in the last 5 years with the onset of online businesses. The availability and ease at which we can start businesses now as entrepreneurs, and a lot of people have gravitated towards personal branding, whether it's coaching or whatever it may be. So this is a good framework to start thinking about, okay, how can I build this personal brand? So if you see there right in the middle, in the core, it's who you are. So if you're gonna like sell your brand, if I'm gonna sell the Alice Soon brand, I better know who I really am, right? What do I stand for? That's kind of important, right? And then around that, at the top is what do you know? So in my case, it could be marketing, real estate, whatever it is that you are really an expert in. To the right, who do you know, right? So your friends, your family, your networks, the associations you belong to. And to the left, what you create. So what the businesses that you're creating. So this is how you can start thinking about your own personal branding matrix.
And just to go back to that slide for a second, I meet so many people who undervalue and undercount each one of those. Like
Mm-hmm.
they don't give themselves credit for what they know. They don't necessarily
Mm-hmm.
know their transferable skills, or
Mm-hmm.
what they do in their volunteer life, or what they do to help their family. And then who they only look within their immediate circle, and they forget that there's all of these other expanding circles, that those are people you might not know personally, but you have access to be able to get to know them pretty quickly.
Exactly.
And then what you can create with that. I mean, people often sell themselves short. They think who they are isn't big enough.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of undervalue all of these. That's a really good one to kind of remind people that they do have access to all of these resources, and maybe sometimes they need to sit down with someone,
Mm-hmm.
like a branding expert or a coach or a mentor, to be able to really understand the depth of all of these, because a lot of people just go to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times people say, "Oh, well, I only know this many people," and when I've dug in, they're like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah," and they
Yeah,
all of a sudden know
exactly.
100 more people than they thought they did. So cool.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for saying that. And yeah, even I would say the top circle, what you know, I think what happens is you spent so many years accumulating this knowledge or the skills that you may have, you forget because it comes to you naturally, but you forget that other people, for example, if you're Sarah, an accounting professional, you've spent a decade in accounting, you think other people know how to read a cash flow statement or do a balance sheet because you're doing it every day. You went to school for it, when most people don't know that. So exactly to your point, think about, have value for what you know, and don't take it for granted that everyone else knows that, because they probably don't.
Exactly. Yeah. You've got way more skills than you know.
Yeah, exactly. And so I wanted to explain further exactly what this essence of personal branding is. So really all it is translating the essence of who you are so people can authentically connect with you. And then people will want to buy from you because it's based on who you are, and they see who they want to become. And I'm going to give some examples later on who I think are great at personal branding. But that's really what it's about. And personal branding is definitely 24/7. Can you walk the walk and talk the talk? And because if you are the brand, so if I, Alice Soon, am the brand, whatever the brand is I decide it to be, I have to be doing it in all parts of my life. I can't turn it off. I can't just decide I don't want to do that anymore, because people will see that, and they'll see that you're not being authentic, and you can do a lot of damage to your brand that way. And then I like this as well, that I learned from Marissa Murgatroyd, who's another awesome branding coach. So she said, personal branding really is the consistent message you send. And this also applies to corporate and organizational branding, of course. It's the message you send day after day, every email you write, every blog post, every video you put out. It's got to be consistent. And it's in the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth impression that you make every single day, every interaction, every conversation. And so that's why the authenticity piece and the consistency piece is so important. And I liked her quote here, where she said, personal branding is the first impression you make when you walk into a room and what people say about you when you leave.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because that's really,
And,
that's
and
really
and I'm just looking at a couple of those and thinking, oh my goodness, sometimes if I'm in a rush, my
mm-hmm,
consistency goes out the window, right? And I really have to be careful of that, because yeah, I mean, and because if you're writing emails or texts, there's no tone in that. So if you're
mm-hmm,
just kind of like quickly, there's always got to be that consistency of brand. And if your brand is short and direct and you're just like,
mm-hmm.
not now or later, or I'll get back to it or whatever, then that's one thing. But if your brand is more, hey, how's it going? And have you had a glass of wine today?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's a really good reminder to stick with that consistency. So yeah, that's a good one. And
Mm-hmm.
just as a point of time, it's 7:43. So we probably have about 10 more minutes to go through the slides, and then we'll save some time if there's any, questions and answers. And I think a few people are on iPhones tonight, so we might not get quite as many jumping in. But if you've got a question for Alice, or if you've got a comment, feel free to post that in the question box or send me a text. And this is great. This is, I think people are going to be watching this back and making notes, because there's some really good stuff in here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, and so I'm going to go through a few rules here. Again, these are just sort of stimulating questions as you're developing your brand, to help guide you to determine exactly who it is that you want to be, what kind of business it is you really want to have. So rule number one, like in the middle of that circle, is to know thyself, right? So, me personally, I've spent years, a decade on personal growth and development, because it's not only important to me, but I'm really interested by it. So it's about, yeah, like going really deep beyond the superficial, just like what you were saying, Liza, like in that matrix, having someone work with a coach or a mentor and really making them realize, it's a lot deeper. It's way beyond just your job description, your immediate family and friends. And that last question, I think is important. What do you, at the end of the day, what do you really believe? Why did you get into this business? What are you trying
Yeah.
to do? So these are not easy questions to answer, but the best brands really take a lot of time and put a lot of thought into what that really means to you. And then I'm going to go a little bit quickly so we can get to the end. Oops, that's my husband's email.
You're still good for time, but depending
Okay.
on what slide you're on.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so again, this is just more about congruency, right? So who you are must deeply align with your branded business. You know, how do you define yourself in the marketplace? What you stand for? And the example I always kind of like to give, because I used to be a personal trainer when I was in university, is congruency is like hiring a personal trainer for $100 an hour who isn't fit, right?
Right.
Like I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to pay that money if that personal trainer wasn't living the healthy lifestyle that I was trying to achieve. So it's the same thing with your business. And rule number 2, what do you know? So again, in that matrix, what do you know that nobody else does? And it's not just about your education or your job or any, it's all of this big bucket of things, your hobbies, yeah, what you've studied, what you've self-taught, all of that kind of stuff. And the intersection of all of these is what will make you unique. Number 3, I love this, what you create. So I'm a writer as well, and that just lights my soul on fire. So I really love this book called In Flow, and I can never say his name, Mahili Shizam. Anyway, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but he is a scientist, and
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and he really studied how top performers were able to get into the state where they were able to create amazing things, where time just passed effortlessly. So, really think about what do you do? Like for me, if I'm really in the zone with writing, like I need to go to the bathroom, I'm starving, it doesn't matter, right? Like I'm on the laptop, I'm just hitting it. 3 hours have gone by, it doesn't matter. So it's what is it that you're creating that puts you in that zone? That's the magic. That's the magic sauce. And then rule number 4, who you know on that matrix. So I really love this. I took this graphic from LinkedIn. I don't even know who posted it, but this to me, and it also relates to a little bit when we're talking about attracting customers. It's not just about your immediate circle like we talked about, right? And here's the art of selling. So when we're talking about building relationships and building networks, yeah, so like you said, Liza, it's also about maybe you don't directly know someone that does XYZ, but a friend of yours may, right? So it's kind of like 2-3 second, degrees of separation, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then I like this picture from LinkedIn, The Art of Selling, because when we're talking about building relationships and networking with people, often or like some people I meet are kind of like Chuck, right? Where they're just asking,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So you're not going to get anything at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, people can spot that, right? They can spot the inauthenticity. So whereas Frank, he's like, no, I want to give. I want to give Liza as much value and help that I can, and to show her that I really care, so that when Frank does ask for something, whether it's business or help or a referral, you're more likely to do that and you'll close the deal.
Absolutely.
Right? So this to me has been the secret sauce of networking and selling personally. And it's about an exchange of energy as well. So it's fair. And I mean, I've gotten lots of people who were just like, oh, can you give me so-and-so's contact number? And it's like, why? You just feel like you're being used a little bit, right? It's like, well, that's kind of, not right.
And going to the networking meetings where all anybody wants to do is give you their business card. It's like they don't want to have a conversation with you. They don't want to know what you do. They just walk up to you and hand you their business card as if that's what you came here for. And it's like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've all been in that situation. So don't be like Chuck, be like Frank. And that's really, and then when you really do build good relationships, it's like gold, right? Because I mean, I can get, with my best relationships, like you can almost ask them anything and they're so wonderful and they're so willing to help you no matter what. So it's really worth putting in the time. Just trying to see if my lights are flickering here, but into those relationships. So, okay, so I promised you.
Is there a thunderstorm coming?
I don't know. It's the rainy season, so it's rained every day, almost every day. But I don't hear anything. So who knows? But But yeah, so I promised you some examples of personal
So
branding.
who are those women?
Yeah, I've never heard of them, right? And I love this example because of the dichotomy almost in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, of course, the queen on the left side, she only goes by one name. Her
Mm-hmm.
name is Oprah, right? Worth whatever she's worth, $2 or $3 billion. But
Yep.
I mean, everybody knows what the Oprah brand stands for, right?
Yep.
She's authentic. She's obviously known because she was a talk show host, and that's how she became famous. But she's also about self-empowerment, self-actualization, you know, all that kind. And she's really morphed herself, you know,
Yeah.
as she's grown out of her TV show. So, but she's obviously the epitome of personal branding because
Mm-hmm.
she is Oprah. Oprah is the brand, right? There's no separation.
Exactly.
Which is
Exactly.
to, and then the women to the right, love them or hate them, the Kardashians, you know,
Yep.
they're very also particular about the type of brand that they're putting out as a family, right? So they're that, you know, sexy, glamorous, fashion, you know, that sort of, you know, they've built their empire on social media basically, but they are a brand.
Yes, they
They,
are.
they know
Like
exactly
you
who they
say,
are.
love them or not, they're
Yeah,
definitely a brand.
exactly. So I thought these are the great examples of personal branding because people will know exactly what we're talking about. And now we're going to move on to some different brands, our favorite brands as well.
Our brand that's just getting started. And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and you know, I mean, it could change, right? Because
Mhm.
this came very much from when I just started the organization and did a really quick, you know, concept of what might it look like, and we came up with this wren on top of the roof. But you know,
Mhm.
a little while from now, when we go to our members and say, hey, you know, what does wren mean to you? The brand could we could go through a big change. I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to be doing a little bit of strategy and planning this summer because we're going to go through a big growth phase in the autumn, and so you know, it could be time to change the brand a little bit. I mean, that's something that people do, and who knows, you know, Wendy or the people who just designed my new banner, they they might curse me. But I guess you know that's one of those things, right? It's like, oh my God, I gotta change the brand. Ah!
Yeah. But that's okay.
So we'll see.
And that's important. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
brands evolve, right? You need to, like you said, you need to evolve with your customer. And I've been through actually several major rebrandings at very large organizations in the past. And and you need to, because after, 20 years or 2 decades of a brand, you need to kind of freshen it up a little bit,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, and that's okay as well. But I want to get through the next couple of examples where we're talking more about organizational or corporate branding. So as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you can decide what type of branding, like I mentioned, you want to do. Do you want to be more of your own personal brand, or do you prefer more of an organizational brand? So WREN is a great example here. To me, and I think Saliza, we talked about this, what you want to communicate in this brand is you're fun, you're friendly, you're bold, but more importantly, you're communicating the values of the community you want to build, the collaboration we have with all the women, and the connection. So
Mm-hmm.
that the brand and everything you put up has to speak to that, and it does. And of course, you want to be fun, approachable, inclusive, empowering women, all that kind of thing. So everything that you put out there, you want to resonate with that brand. But that to me is what the WREN brand has done a really great job at. And then I put my brand up here as another example. So my husband and I made the decision for our company. It's called Tesoro Real Estate. So Tesoro actually means, in both Spanish and Italian, it means treasure.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and we just like the way it sounded, like Tesoro. So,
Yeah.
we decided to make an organizational brand, so it's more like, it's not, the Alisoon brand or anything. It's our company brand. It's separate from us, but the brand was very intentional, and we wanted it to have a clean look, more of a corporate look, and very investor focused on there.
Yep.
So we're a boutique investment firm. We focus on the projects and the private equity and the private developments. So what we were trying to communicate with our brand is that we're professional, to inspire confidence, in our investors, that they would get a good ROI, manage their wealth for them, that sort of thing. So these are just some examples, and I just put some examples. If you go to our website, you can see,
And
we were very intentional in that
this
brand.
was one of the questions that I had. Why is branding important as a real estate investor? But
Mm-hmm.
I think you've addressed it there, right? Again, with WREN, our brand is attracting our customer, and your brand is attracting your customer. And with what you're doing, it's very specific, and with what WREN doing, it's very specific. And so
Exactly.
that brand helps to create that delineation about who am I going to go with, and sometimes people, I mean, I've known people who have made a decision based on a brand,
Mm-hmm.
like without even knowing the company or anything about them. They've gone to the website, or they've liked the logo, or they've liked the professionalism of it, and they've like, that professionalism spoke to me, and so I went with them, right? And others are like,
Yeah,
I wanted something fun, so I went with this
exactly.
crazy company because their website was crazy. So it's
Yeah, exactly.
how important it is.
Yeah, exactly. And the important thing to realize is there's room for everything and everyone. It's just you've got to pick. You can't be, and I think we talked about this as well, you can't be all things to all people. As a business, as a marketer, it's just not a good thing to do. So yeah, there's room for everyone, but you need to be very clear on who you
Yeah.
want to be and who you're targeting as well.
And
And then the third,
I really like the room for everyone comment, because that's something we talk about a lot, right?
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of billions of people on the planet, and we're all looking for something, and we're all looking for the right people to connect with, and we haven't reached a saturation point yet. So.
Exactly. Exactly. I think it's what one of my good friends says, it's a scarcity mindset. Sometimes people get bogged up in that, and it's not necessary. There's enough abundance for everyone. And then just a quick last third example. I really like Lloyds Bank and their branding. They are a bank in the UK, but they went through a big rebranding a few years ago. And if you'll see in their ads here, they don't really talk about branding. There's no talk about, service hours, interest rates.
Yeah,
They're talking about, how their bank helps their customer. They make things easy so their customers have more time. That's the main one, Or
yeah.
I like the one with the fairy tale because it still feels like a fairy tale to walk through my own front door. So obviously they're talking about mortgages, that being able to purchase your own home, but they're not using that type of language. They're hitting you on that emotional level.
Yeah, it's that emotional feeling, right? It's people, and I had this conversation just yesterday. People very rarely make their decisions on, I mean, even in real estate, people say, oh, I decided on the numbers. That's not necessarily true, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's something that they feel, they feel authentic about it, or they feel good about it, or they feel that it's the right decision, or they feel, yeah, it's
Exactly.
it's all about the emotions and the feelings, even if people don't want to admit it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're 100% right, for sure. And then we're on to our third main section now, which is how to attract clients. And we've talked about a lot of this already in the last, 45 minutes or so. So, there's sort of a trend that's happening now, in marketing that's saying, actually now your tribe is more important than your niche. So for many years when I was like in school in 2003, people kept talking about you got to hit your niche and this and that. But now we're talking more about your tribe. And what a tribe really is about the people that you attract that naturally resonate with you, right? So we talked a lot about this earlier already as well. And I like this number. So this is something I learned from Seth Godin, who's a big marketing guy. And he talks about having 1,000 true fans, right? So, let's not obsess about getting, a million Instagram followers, right? That would be awesome if you can do that. That's great. But that's for the Kardashians of the world and other people, right? For, a good small business entrepreneur, if you can get 1,000 true fans that will literally buy anything you have to offer and who really resonate with you and are loyal to you, that is more valuable, as a revenue source or as a customer base than having a million people that like to look at your photos, for example.
Absolutely. They're your ambassadors. They're your brand ambassadors.
Exactly. And that's a very reasonable number to achieve, right? You can start with 50 or 100 and move up to 1,000. So I like that because it's very realistic. And I like this quote too. It's better to be loved by few than liked by many.
Yes, really good.
Yeah.
Those are, so obvious, but we forget about them all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And then in terms of cultivating clients, like again, there's you can do a whole class just on that. I believe, especially for the small business entrepreneur, that a combination of both in person and online is really important. I've known people, obviously some people are very super online savvy, so they can build their business that way, but it takes a lot of, time, money, and effort, and, technology changes so quickly, that I think the secret sauce is to have a good balance of both, because the truth is, especially in our business, there's a trust factor, so people need to know who you are. And we're talking sometimes about large numbers, right? Like, I'm not asking you to buy a $10 like t-shirt, which I could probably do online. Like, I'm asking you, if I'm asking you to be a JV partner with me or invest with me, it's 50,000, 100,000, that's a lot of money, or some people's like savings. So if we can do a little bit of both, work on the in-person. Online could maybe be where we can attract some leads perhaps, or, provide some education. So there's different strategies, but I think to get clients, it's good to do both. Because I know people that just do online and they don't go out there and meet people, and vice versa, right? They just focus on going to networking events and they don't have any presence online whatsoever, which is, I think, doing themselves a disservice as well. So how do you find that good balance? This number 2, I find really important: cultivating and appreciating the customers you already have. Often people obsess about, I need to get new customers, and they forget about the people who have already spent money with you are probably more likely to buy from you than a person who's never heard of you.
The telecommunications companies are notorious for that, right? They have all, sign up and get a free or one year free contract or something, but they forget about people who've been with them for 20 years.
Exactly. And so, and it infuriates. Yeah, exactly. Infuriates you, and it's terrible. So appreciate the customers you already have. They're more likely to spend money with you because they already have in the past. Referral incentives are really good as well. We talked about the importance of peer recommendations. So if you refer a customer, you may offer them XYZ in return. I really like having special bonuses, exclusive offers to your current clients first. Right, so you may have a window period where you say, I have this great deal because you're a client. I'm freezing it for 7 to 14 days before I take this out to the general public, so you get first access. So that's really, people appreciate that. They feel special. It's a great marketing tool. And the last piece, to me, is extremely important, and a lot of people forget this. I've worked with businesses that, they're great business people, but for some reason they don't understand why data is important in marketing. Know your data. Which means, if you're, let's say, a boutique hotel and you want to attract more people to book rooms with you, you need to know, for example, if the signs that you have on the road are just as effective as, TripAdvisor or Booking.com. Because you may not, depending on where your hotel is. So you need to know how people are finding you, how they're converting, that sort of thing.
And I think that is something that small businesses and startups don't do well. I mean, I know for myself, being, I still consider us very much in startup mode. That knowing your data is a piece that we're going to start to bake in now, because we're at that point now where we really have to, because people are coming at us from so many different directions. So yeah,
exactly. And like, where are they on every part of that marketing cycle, right? It's like, how do they hear about you? How do they get awareness? How do they get, so it's a lot of stuff, and it can be complicated, but when you do it right, it's really worth it, and you're converting. You can really generate revenues a lot quicker and easier that way when you know your data, because you're not wasting time on things that don't convert at the end of the day.
Exactly. That's awesome. This is terrific. If anybody's got any comments, I know we're at 8:03, so we're probably going to finish up fairly quickly. But if you've got a comment or a question, pop it in the question box. I think this has been terrific, and I know we probably didn't get to all of the because we're going a little bit over time, but I'll let you finish first, and then we may be able to get a couple questions in there. But yeah, this is awesome, Alice. It's such a good reminder. I mean, I'm finding it, for me, such a good reminder. Yes, things I have to go back and do.
Yes. We're always doing it, right? As entrepreneurs and business owners. So the last few slides, I just wanted to talk about content, and I wanted to change that term, content is king, to content is queen. Right, to be mindful of our language. But this is actually a really important way to, speaking of attracting clients, is developing content. And there's lots of ways that you can do it. I just made up some fun covers right here of different types of content, but there's so many different ways, and I'll go into that in a minute. But the reason why content is important, especially for your online audience, is because they haven't met you in person. They don't know who you are. They will consume your content first before they buy from you.
Right.
So again, back to knowing your customers, think about what do they want to learn? What are their gaps? What are their pain points? And the most important thing is how are you providing value? So, it's back to that Frank and Chuck thing. So if you're Frank, I'm giving you a lot of free value. In the online world, fortunately, unfortunately, that's how it's got to be, because you've got to prove your value first before they'll convert on you. So there's that. And then here's some examples. There's so many different ways you can develop content. I mean, content in and of itself can be like a full-time job, right? I had a whole marketing team. You have one person that just focuses on that. But there's so many different ways. For example, for me, I write, because I'm a writer, I write a lot for a lot of magazines and publications. So I've written a lot for real estate publications, both in Canada and the US. And now I'm starting to also write, I write for the Costa Rican News. Now I got a gig there. I actually just got another exciting gig in a UK travel publication, talking about Costa Rica, because, this country is, one of my passions and my second home. So there's different ways you can create content based on your strengths and what you are passionate about. So here's a whole list, right? Yeah, Ren's awesome with the newsletters. On there, you can do, post videos, you can do little quotes, video tip, whatever it is that you enjoy doing and that your audience will value. And I think, this is basically the last slide. So at the end of the day, when it comes to branding, be who you are, have a clear vision. That's the most important thing. And then stand your ground. And then confidence comes from knowing who you are. And and there you go. You would have built a great brand.
I like that one. Be unapologetic and standing your ground. I did a focus group when I first started WREN, and I got to tell you, some of the guys were like, "You're starting a discriminatory organization," and I'm like, "No, I'm just marketing to women. You're still welcome." And once a year or maybe twice a year, we have a ladies only. But I try to use the analogy: if you go into any real seminar or education thing or webinar, 90% of the room is men, and women just felt like they weren't comfortable. So we had to be able to offer them a space that was comfortable. But I took some real pushback on that, but I've stood my ground, and it was at times it was a little challenging. But I think it's really important to be able to do that. So that's awesome. Let's just see if there's any questions. And it's 8:07. There's a couple questions that I'm going to take a minute. What's the biggest mistake that you see with people who are starting out, entrepreneurs and small businesses? What's the biggest mistake that they're making with their marketing?
With their marketing, that's a good question. We touched on a lot of them, in this webinar. Number one, trying to be all things to all people, right? Not knowing your data. So those are some things we talked about. Another thing I see is sometimes they try and do everything themselves. So they're not, which makes sense because you're an entrepreneur, you're starting out, you kind of wear a lot of hats, but at some point you need to invest in the experts to help you, especially if that's not your strong point. It's really worth it and it will pay off in the end. That sort of thing as well. Are some of the mistakes that I see.
Outsource early. That's the way that I learned it. Outsource early and outsource as much as you can. It's a matter of coming up with how much is your time worth doing what you could be doing, which is attracting investors or sponsors or speakers or talking to people, versus what are the tasks that need to be done. And I know, with me, I still get caught up in a lot of the tasks because we are just getting to that point now where it's like, okay, we're getting bigger and we got to start outsourcing more. So I've outsourced some stuff to you.
Exactly. And I mean, that's stuff I like doing. So, it's great. And it's not the best use of your time because you love to deal with the sponsors and talking and meeting, running the events. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention as well in terms of content that WREN does well is running events is content, right? So you've got your speakers. It's revenue source, of course, but you're providing content, live content, and interactive content by the events that you're putting on. And now, of course, we're going to come to Toronto, which is awesome. Yeah, but those are some of the, yeah, those are hiring out for sure. It's a good one.
Absolutely. Super. Well, I guess we should probably end it there because it's 10 after 8 and we always go a little long with questions and answers. This has been really good. There weren't as many people on as there often are, but I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to watch this because there's a lot of great content in here. Speaking of content,
Mm-hmm.
and this is so valuable for anyone who has a small business, who's hoping to become a real estate investor. Some of it, you know, people know a lot of this, but they need the reminder.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing your customer is fantastic. Yeah, it's just for me, it's a really good reminder of what I need to be sort of circling back to. So
Mm-hmm.
I know you and I will be having a talk,
Yes,
and
we
we'll be
will.
like
We
getting
will.
everything checked in.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
in
Oh, and I
constant.
also wanted to add that to the people who are listening and who watch the recording. I have my email there. I'm happy to, if you think of a question later on, you have a marketing or branding question, I'm more than happy to answer them for you because I love doing this. So
That's awesome. So I'll just make sure that our members know to reach out to you. And yeah, and when you get back from Costa Rica at the end of
mhm.
June, we'll be diving deeper into marketing and branding. So I'm really looking forward to it. So thanks, Alice. That was terrific.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
That was super fun. So hopefully you enjoyed the webinar, and we'll see you on, oh my goodness, when's the next one? July 3rd. So